if you are here, you are doing yourself a great favor. You know, most times people say, what does history have to put in our pocket? But I tell them, if you don't know your past, you won't know your future. It is the past we use to inform the future. A river that forgets its source will soon dry up. You understand? In as much as that we are in an octopus generation, a generation that moves an hashtag, it is important that you pay attention to history, to facts, okay, to what happened in the past, so you will know why things became the way they are. And you see, in a country like yours, because my host is a Nigerian, in a country like Nigeria, something happened. You find out that in Nigeria, history is not being taught. And even if history is being taught, there's something we call censored history, a kind of history that they don't want to arouse emotion. You know, I was having a conversation with a Nigerian professor some time ago. I said, why don't you take it up upon yourself to teach people history? He said to me, Tankraya, how do I teach an Hausa child that a Fulani man conquered him in a class where you have Fulani and Hausa? How do I do that, Tankraya? Tell me. Or why do I tell an Igbo man that 30,000 of his brothers and sisters were taken out in the pogrom in the north in 1966? How do you want me to teach him that? That the person who did that to him is sitting close to him in class? Do you see why history has to be hidden? I said, no. I know that those things are sad, but that's why it is history, because history does not care about your emotions. You must teach it the way it is. You know, the African proverb said, throw the bone to the dog. Forget about what the dog would do with the bone. Leave it there. Say the way it is. Because the truth is that in the consciousness of curiosity, people will want to know. People always want to know that which you are hiding from them. Okay? And I think Nigeria has come of age to let it out. Let people know. Because you know, the beautiful thing about the Nigerian Biafran war is that it is one of the first war in Africa to be fought under the scrutiny of the international television and radio coverage. So people actually had video clips of this. In fact, the Western world had the Biafran Nigerian history video. You can play and watch from beginning to the end. But those clips were hidden and burned for people not to know. Do you understand? Okay, so let's get started. You see, today's our 5th time in this class. We have talked about a lot of things. Down from transatlantic slave trade, down from the Arab slave trade, because I always make sure I mention the Arab slave trade, because most times people intentionally downplay the Arab slave trade because of religion. No, we must talk about the Arab slave trade because the Arabs were the first to enslave Africans before every other person. Do you understand? So we talked about it. We talked about the Berlin Conference, the scramble for Africa, talked about the Kumeko War, talked about how George Goldie sold Nigeria for £865,000. We talked about how that administrative trading right was given. We talked about everything that happened, how Nigeria became amalgamated. We talked about the Lagos 1851 bombardment, talked about Lagos becoming a colony in 1861. We talked about how they created regions in Nigeria, the state creation. We talked about the January 15th, 1966 military coup d'etat. We talked about the 29th, thank you, my brother. We talked about the 29th July 1966 counter coup d'etat. We talked about the 3rd and the 5th movement in Abuli to find peace. We talked about all those things. Many things that we talked about. In fact, some days we have to come with our hanky to clean our tears because a lot of things happened. Okay? And today, what are we talking about? Today, we are talking about how life was faced. Last time I told you that when Onitsha was captured, movement stopped. I told you that when on the 39th or 31st of March, okay, when there was a bag and an ambush, what happened? Biafrans proved to the world that you can occupy a city, but you cannot control it. Okay? I told you about the 109 vehicles and 6,000 soldiers that were marched through a Bagana that was laid an ambush on by who? By Jonathan, okay, of the 11th Division of the Biafran Army, Jonathan Uchendo. Okay, and then I told you how Calabar was captured. I told you that when Calabar was captured, the wound began to bleed. But then I told you that when Port Harcourt fell, what happened? Life stopped. You see, the war right now, after Port Harcourt was captured, the Nigerian soldiers have reached the end point of their plan. What was their plan? I told you that from initial stage, Nigerian government had three plans. What is that? Blockade, encirclement, and starvation warfare. So right now, the Nigerian army is no longer advancing. What are they doing? They are now suffocating. No longer advancing, suffocating. So Biafra major access to the sea has been cut off. So the war ceases from being about gun and became about survival. Food became a weapon. Children began to die of malnutrition, lack of protein, kwashiorkor. People began to die. Let me make you cry, but don't cry. You see, July 1968, it was estimated that about 3,000 Biafran children were buying. I'm using buy. I think international audience, when you hear buy, we are talking about, you understand, because of the algorithm and the censorship of the platform. So as of July, okay, it was estimated about 30,000 children were being buy on daily basis, not weekly basis, daily basis. By August, it skyrocketed to what? To 6,000. Why is it so? Because the more the Nigerian army captured the Biafran city, okay, the more refugees and homeless people you have, the more hunger and starvation. Then the Nigerian government backed the policy of starvation. That was why the Minister of Finance, the person of Awolowo, made that statement. What is the statement? He made a statement and said, everything is fair in war, and starvation is one of the weapons of war. I don't understand why we should continue to feed our enemies fat so he can have strength and come back and fight us. So the Nigerian government supported the policy of starvation. The Nigerian military uses it as what? A tactic to hold them down. But like what I told you earlier on, that the Nigerian Biafran Civil War is one of the first wars in Africa to be fought under the scrutiny of the world television and press coverage. So the world actually saw those children. Pictures were circulating all over the world. So what happened? I told you that before. Biafra won the sympathy of the world, but Nigerian government won the support of the world government because of interest. That was why on the 29th of May 1969, okay, a US student, Bruce Mayok from Columbia, schooling in New York, what did he do? He went in front of United Nations. Why? Because he saw the picture of children who were dying of kwashiorkor in the Biafran land. He took a placard, wrote, "Stop the genocide, save the Biafran children." He went in front of United Nations, complained. They didn't listen to him. He set himself ablaze. He was taken to hospital and he passed on the 30th of May 1969. That was a self-protest. So that's to tell you that the world actually saw what was happening. So what happened? People like Red Cross and other well-meaning people around the world began to send food. But the Nigerian government intercepted and refused them to send food to the Biafrans and said, for you to send them food, you must first give it to us. Okay? Let the food come through the route of Nigeria. But the Biafran government refused and said anything that comes from the Nigerian government is going to be laced with poison. We are not going to take it. Do you see how difficult it was? So children continue to die. It was that pathetic. The world watched innocent children die. So the number went from 3,000 daily to 6,000 daily. Starvation warfare. Pathetic. Worse than genocide. And then let's move You see, this is the part where you get your pen and your paper, because this has to do with military strength now. We're entering into the war proper. So you're going to be hearing names, locations, and event. Okay? So, in August, the Nigerian commander of the Marine 3rd Brigade Commando, who was Benjamin Adekunle, popularly known as the Black Scorpion, decided to capture the three popular Biafran cities, Owerri, Umuahia, and Aba. And so the military operation was codenamed Operation OAU. And so it was written in a triangular shape. You have to capture Umuahia, capture Owerri, capture Aba at the same time. That was the plan of the Nigerian government, because then the capital of the Biafran army was situated in Umuahia. That was where Ojukwu was. And so what happened? Who are those that are going to do this? In early August, the Nigerian 15th Brigade, 16th Brigade, and the 17th Brigade. The 17th Brigade was commanded by Fremont Shande. Remember Fremont Shande? I told you in our previous class. He was the one whose 17th Battalion by the Biafran foreign mercenary. What was his name? Georgino Muslito. He was the one who pied him. So right now, his morale is there. So he came with the 15th and the 16th Battalion to capture Aba. So what happened? They stationed their position between Aba and Umuahia Road. On the 2nd of September, the 16th Battalion of the Nigerian Army, led by Lieutenant Colonel E.A. Etuk, assaulted the Biafran Brigade, that is the 15th Brigade, which was assigned with the responsibility of protecting the city of Aba. They fought for 24 hours, but because the Nigerian 16th Brigade, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel E.A. Etuk, were highly sophisticated, they were able to hold the Biafran 15th Division in Aba. So E.A. Etuk called for reinforcement. When he called for reinforcement, the 17th Brigade of the Nigerian Army, commanded by Philemon Shandi, came for reinforcement. But the war was very strong because Aba was the workshop of survival of the Biafran land. You can't capture it easily. So the Biafran held their stand. They fought house-to-house combat. And at the end of the day, the commander of the Nigerian 17th Brigade, Fremont Shandi, was killed in the process. So the 16th Battalion, commanded by who? E.A. Etuk, called for another reinforcement, and that is the Nigerian 15th Brigade. Came for reinforcement in Aba, joined forces together, and were able to push the Biafran 15th Division away from Aba. Aba was captured on the 4th of September 1968. That was how Aba was captured. When Aba was captured, Biafra did not just lose another city. No, Biafra lost a workshop of survival. So now, Aba has been captured. Umuahia and Owerri is in sight. So what happened? Immediately, the Nigerian 16th and the 15th Brigade were charged with the responsibility to capture Owerri. And so they moved to Owerri. But when they got to the outskirts of Owerri, they met the Biafran 14th Division. The Biafran 14th Division held them in Owerri, but after some few resistance, they were pushed out of the city of Owerri. The 16th Division occupied Owerri. That was when Ojukwu immediately replaced the commander of the Biafran 14th Division and placed who? Okigbo Kalu. Okigbo Kalu, who was a lieutenant colonel, was charged with the responsibility. Ojukwu reminded him that he failed in Port Harcourt and gave him 24 hours to drive the enemies away from Obinze. Obinze, 10 meters away from the main city of Owerri. That place must be captured within 24 hours. Hence, Okigbo Kalu should tender his resignation letter and leave the Biafran army. But we all know that that was a way to boost his morale. So within hours of that comment from Ojukwu, Okigbo Kalu marched with the Biafran army, went into Obinze and chased away the Nigerian 16th Division away from Obinze. And then the 16th Division now advanced and went back to where? To the main city of Owerri. They remained there for then. Remember, no one have attacked Umuahia yet. So on the 18th of September 1968, the Nigerian commander of the 3rd Marine Commando, who was Benjamin Adekunle, nicknamed the Black Scorpion, took the Nigerian 18th and 13th Brigade, okay, to go capture Umuahia. But Umuahia was not just a place. To capture Umuahia, blood has to be paid, because that was the commercial nerve. That was the power center. To take it, it has to do with life and death, because the Biafran soldiers would do everything possible not to lose it. But what happened? Benjamin Adekunle, the name Black Scorpion was not given to him because it should be given to him. The name Black Scorpion was given to Benjamin Adekunle because he was a competent Nigerian soldier. So what happened? He took the Nigerian 18th and 13th Division and Brigade down to Owerri. But before they could get to Owerri, they were confronted by a division of the Biafran army. That was where they fought for days. The both sides exchanged sharings and artillery. The both sides lost men. That was when Benjamin Adekunle began to call for reinforcement from the Nigerian army. But guess what? Reinforcement did not come. After 4 days of heavy bombardment from east side, the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando lost 20,000 soldiers. You know, most times people think that the Nigerian soldiers lost people at a bag and an ambush. The place they lost more people was on their effort to conquer Owerri. The Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando, commanded by Benjamin Adekunle, named the Black Scorpion, lost 20,000 soldiers. So what happened? He knew that if he continues, he stands the risk of extermination. So what happened? On the 1st of October 1968, the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando, commanded by Benjamin Adekunle, the Black Scorpion, decided to retreat. And they went back to where? Port Harcourt. Then, leaving the 16th Battalion at where? Owerri. Because remember, that operation is called Operation OAU. So, the 4th troops were supposed to capture the cities at the same time. Remember, the 15th and the 16th Brigade was commanded by E.A. Etuk. 17th Brigade was commanded by Philemon Shande. But Philemon Shande had been pied. So his own brigade was absorbed into what? 15th and 16th Brigade. Now the both brigade is being commanded by E.A. Etuk. E.A. Etuk absorbed the 3 brigade to make it what? 16th Brigade alone. And now he's not aware of what happened to Benjamin Adekunle, who has retreated to Port Harcourt, and so he was trapped. So on the 15th of October, the Nigerian commanding army general, Who was that? Brigadier Alexander Mmadebo, the writer of the Nigerian Revolution and the Biafra Civil War, hailed from Oka. What did he do? He was the commander of the Biafran 52nd Brigade. He carried his troop and began coming to capture Owerri from the north. Remember, Owerri is still under the jurisdiction and occupation of the Nigerian 16th Brigade. Biafrans only have somewhere at Obieze, that is Okibo Kalu, the commander of the 14th Division. But in the major city of Owerri, the Nigerian 16th Division still controlled it. So Alexander Mmadebo is now commanding his troops coming from the north. But let's stay there, because as this is happening, something else is happening somewhere. So remember that this war we're happening simultaneously. So there's need for me to touch them so you will not be confused with dates. So have it in mind that we stopped at Alexander Mmadebo. Now, let's go to something else you need to know. From the beginning of the war, the Biafran army were having a little misunderstanding with the mercenaries they were brought to help them in the war. Because the mercenaries did not want to take the front side of the war. They always push the Biafrans to go to the front. You know how white counterparts usually behave. So, the second in command of the Biafran army, what was his name? Philip F. Young. Philip F. Young managed to convince Ojukwu to send the Biafran 4th Commando that was headed by Rofstana, a no-nonsense Italian mercenary, to carry out what was called a counter-assault on the Nigerian 2nd Division that was occupying Onitsha. And so that military operation was codenamed Operation Hiroshima. Operation Hiroshima. That was what that military attack was codenamed. And so, on the 15th of November, 1968, Lieutenant Colonel Rofstana, took how many soldiers? 4,000 soldiers, and moved to Onitsha. But this is one of the most difficult sides of the war. He faced the Nigerian 2nd Division face to face in an open terrain war without any natural blockade that they could hide. Remember, I told you who was commanding the 2nd Division. That was Murtala Muhammad. That was who bombarded Onitsha the first time. That was who entered Onitsha. But what did I tell you last time? I told you that when Murtala Muhammad went to Lagos to tell Yakubu Muhammad how he captured Onitsha, they found out that he went into Biafran land with 20,000 soldiers, only to succeed to capture Onitsha with just 2,000 soldiers. My God, you lost 18,000 and you call that a success? No. Immediately, Yakubu Gowon stopped him from commanding the 2nd Division. So now I'm telling you that that Biafran 4th Commando is now facing the 2nd Division of the Nigerian Army in Onitsha. So what you should ask me is Tankroya. Since Murtala Muhammad is no longer commanding them, Tankroya, who is commanding them? That is Colonel Ibrahim Haruna. He was the one now charged with the responsibility to command the 2nd Division. And so, the Biafran 4th Commando faced with the Nigerian 2nd Division in Onitsha. They bombarded each other for good 4 days. The Biafran 4th Commando lost a whole lot of soldiers. And then, the second in command to Rofstana, whose name was what? Tofa. Tofa gave instruction to a unit of the Biafran army headed and controlled by who? By Mark Gusin. These 3 people are all mercenaries from Germany. When Mark Gusin went ahead with his troops to try to face the 2nd Division in an open terrain, that was suicide. So immediately, On the 19th of November, 1968, Magushon was shot and he died immediately in Onitsha. And that's what made the Biafran 4th Commando to withdraw and return back to Owerri. Onitsha remained under the occupation of the Nigerian 2nd Division. So what happened next? Remember, something is still happening in Owerri. I told you something is happening there. The 16th Division is there. And so, on the 5th of December, who was that? That was the commander of the Biafran 60th Brigade. What was his name? Asum Asonia. Spell it, Tankraya. A-Z-U-M. Asum Asonia. A-S-O-Y-A. He was the commander of the 60th Brigade of the Biafran Army. In order for him to capture Owerri, he carried out an assault on the Nigerian 16th Brigade commanded by E.A. Etuk. But despite the fact that E.A. Etuk was having so many assaults, he maintained his position. He maintained, because he had so many armor tanks, he maintained his position. Guess what happened? Let's stay there and go back to Onitsha. Pay attention. We are still here. Rafstana, that man, that German no-nonsense soldier that commanded the 4th Commando and went to Onitsha and did not succeed. He was devastated. He started drinking to get away with the heart panics he usually gets. And because of that, Ojukwu deported him and other 5 mercenaries back to Germany, and then made his second, Toffa, to be the new commander of the Biafran 4th Brigade Commando. Established. Let's go back to Owerri. Alizendra Madebo is coming from the north. Obinze has been occupied by the 14th Division of the Biafran Army, commanded by Wu Okigbo. From the west, the Biafran 60th Brigade, Asum Asonia, is coming from the west. Guess what happened? On the 15th of April, we are no longer in 1968. No, we are now in 1969. On the 15th of April, 1969, from the east, guess who is coming? The commander of the X Division. What is that X abbreviated as? Strike Division. Guess who control it? Timothy. Lieutenant Colonel Timothy Onwatuegu. Does that name ring a bell? I want to know, my history students. Tell me in the comment section, who was Timothy Onwatuegu? This is the first time we are mentioning him in this war, but he's a very prestigious and prominent person in history. Tell me who is he in the comment section. I'm giving you just 2 minutes. Tell me who is Timothy Onwatuegu. I want to know people who have been following this class. Let's go. Let's go. If I count 20, if you mention it, you know, last time the one I say you should mention, nobody got it. Let me know if you get this one. If you mention who Timothy Onwatuegu is. Sophia Tamara say, honestly, I don't know him. Wow. Okay, that's being honest. One of the cool. Thank you, Marco Hazi. One of the cool plotters. I have the book for that young man. Asking for a book, I'll give you one history book. History they cry, my brother. I'll give you one history book and I'll give you the richest man in Babylon. It will help you. Good. Request for it, I'll give it to you. Timothy Onwatuegu, commander of the S Division, meaning Strike Division. He was coming from where? He was coming from the east. So what is left? The Nigerian 16th Division was in the middle. From the west, the 60th Brigade, commanded by Asum Asonia, is coming. From the north, who is coming? The Brigadier General, that is Arizenda Madebo, a no-nonsense officer, is coming from the north. And from the east, who is coming? Timothy Onwatuegu. What happened? They bombarded the Nigerian 16th Brigade. They bombarded him. So what happened? They have to fight their way out of Owerri. So while they were retreating out of Owerri, something terrible happened. On the 20th of April, 1969, the second in command of the Nigerian 16th Brigade, what was his name? Tag Hammer. That was the man who captured Boni. What happened? A Biafran sniper aimed him from afar and tied him. 20th of April 1969, he was tied by a Biafran sniper and he was replaced by who? Guess who replaced him? Tell me in the comment section who replaced Tag Hammer. Who replaced him? Tell me. Who replaced him? Who replaced him? Somebody say go on. How did this person get into here? We will flog you. Go 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 on. Let me now make you so exciting. Go on never came to that wall. Go on was in Lagos giving command. He never stepped foot there. So who did that? Who did that? Tell me. Who did that? Yes, he was head of state. Adekunle. Let me shock you. After Adekunle, see, let me tell you one funny thing in this war. You see that thing that happened in Umuahia, that Adekunle took 13 division and 18 brigade to conquer Umuahia and lost 20,000 soldiers. He never came back again. He never. I'll get there. Who replaced him? Okay, the reason why I usually tell you who replaced him, so you can tell me, okay, is to make the class very interactive. Do you understand? You know, when one person is talking, it's not usually that's not communication. Communication, feedback has to be there. It's not necessary for you to know it. No, it's not for you to know it. It's for the class to be interactive. Do you understand? Yes. So the person that replaced him was Muhammadu Buhari. You see why it's very funny, right? Muhammadu Buhari replaced him. So that was it. That was it. Muhammadu Buhari replaced him. So what happened? Immediately, Biafrans reclaimed Owerri back. So what happened? Let's pause there and show you something. You see, because no, remember, on the 20th of April, okay, 1969, as they were retreating, they lost the second in command, Ted Hammer, okay? They lost him in command. So he was replaced by who? Muhammadu Buhari. They were still retreating because you were having attack from different parts, from the west, from the east, and from the north. There is nothing you can do. So they were retreating. So, but in as much as they were retreating, the second in command has to be replaced. So Muhammadu Buhari came into place. And they retreated and went back to a more Nigerian-dominated place. So what happened? After the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando has failed to capture Umuahia, that was the brigade that was headed by Benjamin Adekunle, the Black Scorpion. What happened? They were all afraid to go to Umuahia. They didn't want to go to Umuahia again until someone came. What was his name? The commander of the Nigerian 1st Division, Mohammed Showa. Mohammed Showa decided to give it a try. So what did he do? He codenamed the operation Operation Leopard. And then he gave the command of the 1st unit of Nigerian 1st Division to who? Theophilus Danjuma. You know Theophilus Danjuma, right? Who remember Theophilus Danjuma in our classes? I talked about him in our last 2 classes. Theophilus Danjuma. Who was he? Who was he? Who was Theophilus Danjuma? Who was he? T.Y. Danjuma. Who was he? Tell me one thing that he did that is very prominent. Who was he? Theophilus Danjuma. Theophilus Danjuma. Who was Theophilus Danjuma? Who was Theophilus Danjuma? Former NCA. There is something he did in Nigeria. Danjuma. Good! Kennedy boy! Kennedy boy! I owe you a book. Theophilus Danjuma was one of the coup plotters of July 29th, 1968 counter coup d'etat. He was one of the people that led the soldiers that went to Ibadan and captured Aguiyi-Ironsi on his courtesy visit to Fujui, the governor, the military governor of the Western region. I owe you something, Kenny boy. So, do you see the irony of the thing? The people who carried out the coup that led to the war were the ones in the battlefield. That's to tell you that Yakubu Gowon was just a figurehead. The people who were in Nigeria were people like Murtala Mohammed and the rest of them. That's why Yakubu Gowon gave him an instruction and said, don't enter Onitsha through don't enter Onitsha through Asaba. He refused to take the order. Yes, he was not the one, but at least he's right. He was the one who led the soldiers to Ibadan. Of course, he's not the one that shot him anyway. Okay, so let's continue. No, I can't forget. I'm seeing the war before me. Oh, oh, Honorable, where have you been? Where have you been? I told you now. I told you that on the 25th of September, 1967, Victor Banjo was executed for treason. Emmanuel Ifejuna was executed for treason in Enugu, 1:30 p.m. Four persons were executed for treason. So betrayal has always been there. In fact, don't worry. As I'm going, I'll tell you that even foreign investors that were in Midwest be snitched on the behalf. Oh, don't worry. We are getting the. Of course, of course. See, the war wouldn't have even gotten to 1970 because people like that would have handed over. Do you understand? So somebody said the man that was coming from the north now sounds Igbo. Who is he? Alexander Madebo. Alexander Madebo, commander of the 52nd Brigade. My dear, treason and betrayal are two different faces of a coin. Do you understand? It is just military. In military, we say betrayal. Okay? So there are two different faces of a coin. Because why was he charged for treason? People like Ifejuna. He was tried and found out that he was having a conversation with the British foreign agent trying to find a way to hand over the Biafran government to the Nigerian central government. So that was treason. And in a layman understanding, it is betrayal. Do you understand? So betrayal is not only when you snitch on your guy. That is what we are discussing now is not a family relationship. It's a war something. Do you understand? So you use a higher vocabulary like that. So let's continue. So the Nigerian First Division under the command of Showa on the 27th of April. Okay? What did he do? He carried out a heavy assault on Umuahia. So what did they do? He took the first division, the 14th division, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 82nd Battalion to Umuahia. Do you see how massive it was? See, Operation Leopard was one of the strong operations that we had. The 1st Division of the Nigerian Army, and then the 4th, the 14th rather, the 14th, the 21, the 22, the 23, the 24, the 25, and 82nd battalions. These ones were spearheaded by T.Y. Danjuma. They all went to Umuahia. At that time, Umuahia was protected by the Biafran 13th Division and 55th Brigade. But something happened. Umuahia came under heavy bombardment. Heavy bombardment. When this was going on, the Biafran 13th Division and 55 Brigade called for reinforcement. But before reinforcement could come, guess what happened? The Biafran 42nd Brigade, commanded by Major Ibrahim Babangida, captured a fraction of Umuahia. Ibrahim Babangida. That was the first time we had him in that war. But the war in Umuahia was so strong that Ibrahim Babangida sustained a heavy injury. And so he was replaced by who? Major Maman Vasta. Major Maman Vasta. You know Major Mama Vasta very well. See, oh my goodness. How many of you know Mama Vasta very well? You know him because, you see, history is very deep. He was the one who took over from Ibrahim Babangida. But later on in future, the one who he took over would buy him later. This one would buy him later. And if you read the story of Glory Okon, how many of you know the story of Glory Okon? If you have heard of the history of Glory Okon, can I see indication in the comment section? Glory Okon. Who have had the history of Glory Okon? You have heard about her, the lady that pushed drug, okay, under the scrutiny when the story of the journalist. You know about her, right? You know that all those drug peddling was between Mama Vasta. Did they fight military to military and people who attack military? Don't worry, you ask your questions at the end of the day. All right? You ask your question at the end of the day. I will give you time for question. So, Ibrahim Babangida was replaced by Mama Vasta after he was injured. And then the Nigerian soldiers asked for reinforcement. You know, this is the place where whenever something happened, the Biafran army cannot retaliate because the airspace was massively used by the Nigerian army. So whenever they call for airstrike, Biafrans are likely to lose because the people who were flying the Nigerian jets were not even Nigerians. First, it was Egyptians. But when Egyptians were dropping missiles where children were, the Biafrans began to speak to the international community that the Egyptians are dropping bombs where civilians are living. Okay? The Nigerian government now dismissed the Egyptians, and then Germans began flying the Nigerian jet. That was the condition that Soviet Union gave Nigeria, that in order for us to give you a private jet, you will not fly it. Foreigners have to fly it. So first, Egyptians flied it, and we are committing genocide here and there. So after the Biafran outcry, they changed them with Germans. So now, the Biafran 13th Division and the 55th Brigade came under heavy bombardment. Bro, from air, the assault was too much. So what happened? Immediately, Ojukwu replaced the commander of the strike division of the Biafran army, who was Timothy Onwatuegu. Ojukwu replaced him with Asom Asonia. He replaced him with him to take over. A more reinforcement came. Who came with that reinforcement? The Hannibal of Biafra. What did I tell you is the Hannibal of Biafra in our last class? Who is the Hannibal of Biafra? And what did I tell you is the history of the word, the origin of the word Hannibal? Anybody that will get this one, anybody that will get this one, 5 books. Like, I'll give you 5 books. I know that you have been following me from the outset. Hey, Omo, you have intelligent people in this comment section. What did this go say? Joseph Achuzie, number 1. Just screenshot your name, okay, and bring it on WhatsApp and say, it is me. Forget the book I will give you. Just forget the book. Joseph Achuzie. So, give me the origin of the word Hannibal. 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 Where did they get that word from? Don't go and Google though. Don't go and Google. Okay. Fides Achuzie. Oh, yeah, great guys. We don't want to give everybody book. Okay, so let's continue. If you find out the meaning of the origin of the word, I studied it in the last class, why he's called the Hannibal of Biafra, and the origin of the word Hannibal. Okay, find out and tell me in the comment section. So let's continue. After heavy bombardment, because Biafra came under heavy bombardment, Ameke was bombarded, Ochibo was bombarded, Umuahia was bombarded. At the end of the day, Biafrans have to retreat from Umuahia. Umuahia was captured. But before it was captured, this is the funny part of this war. You see, remember that the capital of Biafra was first in Enugu. When Enugu was captured, they moved it to Umuahia. Now Umuahia has been captured, they moved it to Owerri. So Umuahia has been captured. And so, Ojukwu gathered his soldiers and they began to look, why did we lose Umuahia? Why did we lose Umuahia? We did everything possible to get Umuahia. How did we lose Umuahia? That is when they found out that there was a betrayal. They found out that there was a group of foreign Italian oil installation in the city of Fuale in the Midwestern region who were giving the Nigerian army sensitive information about Biafra. So before Biafra makes any move, they tell them. So what happened? Ojukwu sent, this is where you see the hypocrites of the Western world. Ojukwu sent the 4th Commando, foreign mercenaries, to go and assault them. They went to that military installation, to that oil installation owned by the Italians at Kwari. They took over there. What happened? At the initial assault, they killed 11 workers. 11 workers, 10 Italians and 1 Jordana. 10 Italians. And then captured 18. These 18 were made up of 14 Italians, 3 Germans, and 1 Lebanese. Ojukwu tried them and found out that truly they were giving sensitive information to the Nigerian army. Do you know what happened? Millions of people have been dying in Nigeria. International community has been quiet, but immediately 18 foreigners were captured. The world went haywire. Pope Paul the deceased, American government, Italian government, UK government started bombarding Ojukwu to release those people. Started bombarding. That, like there was an international outcry that would, as if the people who have been died in Nigeria were nothing. Pope himself sent Ojukwu a private mail to release those people. Ojukwu had no choice than to release them. And they were flown out of Biafra through the scrutiny and parade of Ivory Coast counterparts. People have been dying. These people have been quiet. But just 18 foreign workers, they went haywire. That is how hypocritical the world is. And today somebody is telling me we should protest because something is happening in Iran. You are out of your mind. You are out of your mind. You are out of your mind. Whatever is happening in Iran, we have no business with that in this world. Africans will not put their mouth in what concerns Iran and America. We have had our own share of this pain. 1994 Rwandan genocide, the world was quiet. Let me remind you. Nobody came to help Rwanda. Paul Kagame took it upon himself and we fought and saved ourselves. Biafran war, children died, the world was quiet. South Sudan and Sudan, Congo, what war have you not seen? Have they ever prayed for us? Have they ever fought for us? And something is happening in Iran. You primitive, dirty people are shouting that you stand with Iran. Whereas people like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, are you more religious than them? They are quiet. They know. Why do you think Saudi Arabia is not talking about what is happening in Iran? It's you that is talking. You in your backyard. You think the world knows that you are there. Africa must mind their business. Reserve your strength for what something is coming very soon. Let's reserve our strength and wait. Not to prognose in what does not concern us. You cannot handle the world issue now. Mind your business, Akebulan. Millions of people, 30,000 died in the pogrom in the north. British were quiet because of the oil they are gaining. The world was quiet, but 18 foreign workers were captured. The world went haywire. That is how pathetic the society is. Ojukwu released them. So what happened? It was now obvious that most of the cities in Biafran land are closing down. The end of the book is closed. But the Biafrans refused to give up. Because you see, one thing about this war is this. You see, if you look at the Second World War, when it was obvious that Germany have lost, in fact, some German people made a move for Hitler to be captured. Ordinarily, the Biafrans should have made a move for Ojukwu to be captured and died. Because the reason why they were seizing different places, capturing the cities, the idea of the federal troops was actually for them to capture those cities so that the Biafrans will revolt, capture Ojukwu themselves, and buy him. But these people lost Enugu. Still did not blame their leader. Lost Umuahia, still did not blame their leader. Do you understand? So the belief they had on the man was too much. The love and the passion. Why? Because he was not the one who declared Biafra. It was the people that declared through him. That's why they called him the people's general. So in as much as he was seen as a rebel by the opposition forces, the people themselves sees him as their general. That is why he was not captured. We are going to get to that place. So what happened? In May 1969, in Lagos, the federal troops are now putting finishing touches to the war. They know the war is about to be over. Because what happened? Those places have been captured. I told you that when Onitsha was captured, movement stopped. Abaga reminded the war that occupation does not mean control. When Calabar was captured, the wound began to bleed. But when Port Harcourt was captured, life stopped. That's why the starvation happened. When Aba was captured, Biafra did not just lose a city. Biafra lost a workshop of survivor. Yes, I've talked about Victor Banjo. We have talked about that a long time ago, okay? I've talked about that before. Victor Banjo is 1967, so that one we have closed it. But I told you that when Umuahia was captured, Biafra lost his city. Now, the battle of what? The battle of Owerri. So, the Nigerian army began to make their finishing touches. So, the Nigerian army chief of staff, who was Hassan Kastina, and the head of state, who was Yakubu Gowon, began to make changes. Why? They have noticed that the lieutenant colonels who were commanding their army was already getting fatigued. They needed to change them. Remember, Ibrahim Aruna, who was now commanding the 2nd Division, was not officially appointed, but because he was the second in command to Murtala Mohammed, he needed to step into that shoe. So it is time to make it official. So what happened? In May, they called back who? Muhammad Showa, the commander of the 1st Division. You know, the funny thing is that everyone who attacked Umuahia never continued, because a lot of things happened in Umuahia. A lot of things happened. So they replaced Lieutenant Colonel Muhammad Showa with Colonel Bisala. And then the second in command, who was Ibrahim Hassan, was not allowed to continue with the command of the 2nd Division that was previously commanded by Murtala Mohammed. So it was given to Gibson Jalon. He was a colonel. And then Benjamin Adekunle, who retreated from Umuahia on the 1st of October, 1968. You remember, you didn't hear from him again. What he faced in Umuahia was not ordinary. So he was fatigued and he needed to be replaced. Guess who replaced him? I want to know who replaced him. Tell me in the comment section who replaced him. Gozie, tell me who replaced him. Who replaced the commander of the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando, Benjamin Adekunle, the Black Scorpion? Someone replaced him. Good. I hope he's not using Google to do that. Olusegun Obasanjo. Olusegun Obasanjo. Okay, we have people there. Fidex, well done. Well done, Fidex. Well done, Gozie. Olusegun Obasanjo replaced him, became the commander of the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando. Obasanjo immediately, you know, Obasanjo had been reading the war in newspaper, so he was eager to go. He was eager. You know, the African proverb said, when you have not seen war, you wish for war. Do you understand? Until you see war. So Obasanjo wanted to go down. So Obasanjo's initial plan was to capture 3 places in his mind: Owerri, Oguta, and Uli. Because Uli was the safe haven of the Biafrans. He wanted to capture the 3 cities. So what happened? Before then, a Biafran mercenary, a Swedish mercenary called Gar Gasfan Rissen, commanded the Biafran airspace. He took it upon himself to carry out an airstrike in Benin, in Enugu, and Port Harcourt. And he did. He called it Operation Biafran Babies. I like, you know, the operation, that's the operation I love so much. Operation Biafran Babies. So, he assaulted Port Harcourt, Enugu, and Benin. But he tried to do something, but he could not stop the Nigerian airstrikes. Because the Biafrans knew that something deeper is coming in 1970. And he did. And this was the final battle. The battle that is about to end the enclave of the land of the rising sun. And that was on the 7th of January 1970. Olusegun Obasanjo led the Nigerian 3rd Marine Commando, supported by the 1st and the 2nd Division of the Nigerian Army. They went into Owerri. It was not an easy sight to behold. Owerri was bombarded. Heavily, it was bombarded. on the 7th of January 1970, when Owerri came under heavy attack. The Biafran 14th Division, the Biafran 60th Brigade, the Biafran 52nd Brigade all stood their ground. Joseph Achuzie, the Hannibal of Biafra, Alizenda Madebo, and then the men who knew that this is the last fight. They knew they have already lost this fight, but this is the time to demonstrate your final strength. They fought 24 hours. The both sides were giving each other. Fide, my father told me this part. The Battle of Owerri became the fiercest because that was the last place standing. Achuzie fought to the extent that in the midst of the war, Achuzie was promoted to a colonel, because all this while he has been a lieutenant colonel. But because of what he did in Owerri, he was promoted without a ceremony. He was promoted to a colonel. They fought, but as always as it will be, the Nigerian army was more equipped, because it's not enough that you were facing them on foot. The Germans were also bombarding you. The Germans were also bombarding you. And so what happened? You know, the African proverb said that what an elder will see sitting, a child will not see, even if he climbs the highest Iroko tree. So the Biafran leaders, Effiong and Ojukwu, and others knew that the land of the rising sun has to be closed. And so they began to have their final meeting. Because anything that makes them capture Uli, Ojukwu cannot leave Biafra again. Because Uli became the only escape route to Biafra. And that was the last chance for Ojukwu. So what these guys were doing is to buy time as much as possible for Ojukwu to decide to leave. Because initially, he didn't want to leave. And so he was being convinced, you have to leave. Why? Because when the person that starts an ideology is being captured, that ideology dies with him. But your ability to leave keeps the ideology alive. Because at that moment, Biafra was an ideology. It is because Ojukwu lived, Biafra ceases from just being an ideology to being an identity. So what happened? The people's general was told to leave the land of the rising sun. Ojukwu gave the final message, handed over to Philip Effiong. And then on the 9th of January, 1970, he boarded a private jet and moved from Uli to Ivory Coast to exile. And then Owerri was captured. Arochukwu has been captured. Uli, the safe haven of the Biafrans, was captured. That became the close of the enclave of the land of the rising sun. The people who stood their ground and fought, not just the Nigerian government, but OAU. They fought the international community whose interest was on the Nigerian oil. They stood their ground, fought against what the world could have seen as a genocide. But listen, Biafra ended in paper, but not in the minds of the people who fought the war. Because one thing historians have seen over time is that war can end in paper. It never ends in the heart of those who fought the war. But the most beautiful thing you want to see is that when you look at the land that fought the war, from any side you want to look at it, you don't see the evidence that war was fought in that place. Land of the rising sun. But listen, the war is not yet over, because it has not yet been handed over. Because Philip Effiong will meet with Olusegun Obasanjo, and then he will move to Lagos to meet with Yakubu Gowon on the 15th of January 1970 to officially declare that Biafra ceases to exist. But I will teach you a little clause in that speech that most people don't pay attention to. In our next class, I am going to lead you and open your eyes to see the clause one, and then I will open your eyes to see that most people thought Nigerian Biafra Civil War was fought from 1967 to 1970. I will tell you that the war was actually fought after you think the war ended. In 1970, that was when the Biafrans faced the main war. This war now was not fought by army or by hunger. It was fought by economic policy. 20,000 pounds for survivor and season of abandoned property. The people started from beginning, but today, you know where they are. In our next class, I will explain that for you. Okay? 20 pounds. Oh, 20,000? No, 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 no. No, so no, no, no. If it's 20,000, then you are the richest then. 20 pounds, my friend. 20 pounds. 20 pounds. So life was started afresh. So in our next class, we are going to examine what actually happened in Lagos between Philip Effiong and Yakubu Gowon. What was the clause in that speech? That is two. And we are going to look at that statement, no victor, no vanquish. What does it really mean? No victor, no vanquish. We are going to look at the 3 R's that were supposed to be implemented: reconciliation, rehabilitation, and reconciliation, rehabilitation, and rehabilitation. Yes, 3 R's. We are going to look at it. Let me say it again: rehabilitation, reconstruction, and reconciliation. We are going to look at the 3 R's. What happened? Then, that is when you are going to know who actually was Murtala Mohammed. You will know who actually was Murtala Mohammed. You will know the game that was played in the war and everything that happened. It's a very sad thing to remember, the Nigerian Biafra Civil War. But whenever we talk about it, we are not choosing to make people feel sad. No, that's not what we are doing. We are actually choosing memory over amnesia. We are choosing truth over lies. Do you understand? Because a river that forgets its source will soon dry up. So when the issue of the Nigerian Biafra Civil War comes up, it takes your consciousness to actually know that truth must be spoken. Because people lost their loved ones. You know, when they say that 20,000 people were died, you will not understand what had happened until one person comes from your home. The African proverb say that, you know, when they carry the dead body of another, you think it's a log of wood. Until one day they carry your own person. So the Nigerian Biafra Civil War reminds us of how corrupt the world can be. Do you understand? How corrupt the world can be. Because people are only after their interest. People are only after their interest. Do you know what it means for 30,000 children to be dying of malnutrition on daily basis? Daily basis. And then after a month, it's skyrocketed to 6,000. That is genocide, bro. There's nothing you can use to differentiate that. And that's why people must read. People must ask questions. That's why today you look at around the world and see what is happening. You just laugh because people watch your war like a movie in newspaper. People were enjoying it like a game. The Egyptians, okay? The Egyptians who were bombarding the Biafrans through the airspace, some of them were not even wearing shirts. According to eyewitness, okay? Some of them were doing like fun. You know the way you shoot people like fun. Some of them were shooting like fun. War is not a good thing. I personally believe in a time, because we are in the days of Aquarius, the days of knowledge and information. Anyone who cannot come to the round table and for us to reason is a liability to mankind. You're not supposed to exist. Okay? So Africa must find a way to make things work for each other. If you don't treat people well, there's every need for people to say they want to move. That's why we're telling the people of Morocco to treat Sahrawi very well. If not, Sahrawi will leave. So if you have a fraction in your place who are saying, we want to leave, treat them well. Treat them well. Because every man in life has a right to self-preservation. Every man in life has a right to self-preservation. But the history of the Nigerian Biafra Civil War is one of the most saddest history we have ever seen, because it is one of the recent disaster of humanitarian crisis in the 20th century. Because any war that takes the life of children is not the kind of war we want to discuss, because it is not a civil war. When we say something is a civil war, it means that it is being fought with people who are civil. That's why in war you have what is called war crime. Anything that makes you use that kind of strategy, which is blockade, encirclement, and starvation, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not a good thing, because the blood of the innocent will cry out against you. I love you and I care about you. It's question time, because I have another place to be. I love you. Honorable, thank you so much. I think it's very dark. You can write your question in the comment section. I have sent my request. Very dark saying he has sent his own request already. I think it's there already.
Good evening.
Very dark. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
First of all, thank you for enlightening the young generations.
You're
Though
welcome.
most
Thank
of
you.
us we know a little because our parents told us histories. They told us stories. But my question is, why did the government itself decide to hide all these things from the school?
Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. The day you find out the truth about yourself, you are going to revolt. So, in order to keep you in the dark, the history of the truth about you must be hidden for you not to know. Because knowledge provokes a man to act accordingly. That is why those who know say, as long as the lions do not have historians, it is the exploits of the hunter that will be celebrated rather than the bravery of the lions. That is why in one of my writings I said, Chinua Achebe said things fall apart. But how am I supposed to know when they took history away from school to punch me away from the truth and keep me in the dark? I'm a tortoise without its shells. Look into my eyes and see my scars of proof. You are not supposed to know. It happens from even from your immediate family. If you look deep, there's some certain things that is being kept away from some people not to actually know. See, as it is above, so it is below. If you look at the global world, in fact, the international community don't want Africans to know what they are capable of. Brother, if you know what a black man is capable of doing, you will know that you are not just a man, that melanin magnificent in you is deeper than you think. That is how it is in the government. Okay, so even the so-called history that you are told, you are taught, what happened? They censor it. So it is intentional. Like I told you earlier on, I told a professor in Nigeria, I said, why don't you teach history in Nigeria? He said something to me. He said, how can I tell if an Hausa child in a class where you have Hausa and Fulani that his ancestors were conquered? I can't do that. But that is where it has to be the responsibility Please mute these people. That is where it has to be the responsibility of the government. Okay? Because you must understand something. You see, what your father told you about anything can be wrong. I'm coming. There's a lot of things people's father told them that is wrong. Pay attention. There's some people that their fathers told them that what happened in 15 January 1966 military coup d'etat carried out by Nzogo, another young military officer, was an Igbo coup. Their fathers told them. They did not research. They believed that is truth. Why? You need to understand that when it had to do with history, people are emotional. If you are not able to research actually what happened and go on with what we were told, you are going to be confusing yourself. Okay? But when you actually know what I've been told, is it actually true? Is when you began to what? Make research and ask questions. It just start today. You see that thing you have among your people called identity crisis, where some people from certain places say they are not they are not from you, even when they answer your name, eat your food, have your market days and everything, they say they are not yours. Some of them are not denying because they want to deny. Some of them were told by their fathers and their parents that they are not from there. Do you understand? So if you go with what they told you, you might be wrong, because sometimes even your parents themselves don't know. That's why I said the version of history you were taught in school was heavily reversed to favor your own nation while hiding their crimes, and by so doing fostered an unrealistic sense of patriotism used by manufacturing your allegiance to a corporate entity masquerading as your government. In order for you to be kept loyal, you must be told loyal things. So my brother, that's why history is taken away from school, to keep you in the dark. As simple as that.
Yes, 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 exactly. But another thing is, you you talked about how the Biafra ended on paper, but never in the mind of those who fought for it. But today, we have so many people from that part who are claiming that Biafra is an Igbo nation. Please, how do you correct that?
Okay, you said they are claiming that Biafra is an Igbo nation.
Yes, especially when it has to do with other tribes, including on the map.
Okay, you know, to know tomorrow, you have to look at yesterday and then inform today and then visualize what tomorrow will be like. Whenever something comes up, I just, let me give you one clause to always tell them. Ask them who officially on paper wrote that Biafra was over in 1970. What was his name? Tell me what was his name?
That
Ferry, are
Biafra
you
was
with me?
over.
Yes, who signed, who met with Gowon on the 15th of January? Who met with him? The second in command to Ojukwu. What was his name?
Philip
Philip
Effiong.
Philip Effiong. Does his name ring with the people that you see today as called Igbo? Does his name end with Chukoma or Uche?
No.
Uh-huh. So that's to tell you the ideology. That's why I said that it is an ideology. But because Ojukwu lived, it became an identity. Okay? See, let me tell you something. I tell people, you don't really know yourself. The external forces knows you more than you know yourself. The day it was set, eh? The day when we say that 30,000, listen, we don't usually say that 30,000 Igbos were pied at the pogrom. Do anybody that tells you that is wrong. It was not 30,000 Igbos that were pied though. No, listen, in the north, 30,000 Easterners who were predominantly Igbos. That is to tell you, if they were 100, 70 were Igbos. So the people who claim that they are not from your place were also by there. Because, you see, exposure is a very big thing. When you leave the shores of your place and go far, to places like far north, nobody cares if you are from Delta, you are an Igbo man. Do you understand? That was why that was why the Asaba massacre happened. Do you understand? As long as You are not in that part. As long as you have crossed your place, all this division that you are doing is your business. We are the one dividing. Just like as you now, most Igbos, whoever comes from the north is Hausa and Fulani. But you don't know there's
Exactly.
so many people who are in the north who are not Hausa and Fulani. So the earlier people began to tell themselves the truth, the better for them. I usually tell people that Esther in the Bible was enjoying in the king's palace. Esther was a queen, and there was a rumor that the Jews are going to be exterminated. Esther was not showing concern. Esther was flexing in the king's palace until the uncle sent her a message, Mordecai. Esther, do not think because you are in the king's palace, when they want to kill the Jews, they will leave you. They will come to that palace and tie you. That was when Esther, no, this is serious. Oh. Esther have to go and meet the king. They want to kill my people. Oh. What happened to Asaba people? We are not Igbos. One Nigeria, one Nigeria. The people we are telling are not interested. As long as they are concerned, you are part of them. so don't worry. See, when people deny where they come from, don't bother yourself. Live your life. The day it comes, the enemy will tell where you're from. Do you understand?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
Very,
Thank you for the
Hello.
very thank you.
Yeah, hello, good
Very
evening.
thank you so much. Thank you. Who is speaking?
Yeah, good evening. Modern
Who
Day
is
Tanker.
speaking? Introduce yourself to us, okay?
Okay, sorry, my name is Gozier.
Okay.
Yes,
Because you're welcome.
yeah. So thank you again for your teaching. But I have maybe two questions, or maybe three, maybe. So my first question is, I don't know, I wasn't present when you spoke about the Victor Banjo involvement, or why Ojukwu decided to involve him. But do you think that was a monumental mistake by Ojukwu, and that but for his betrayal, the Biafran troops would have succeeded in capturing Lagos or Goan, which would have ultimately, ended the war effectively? And then the second question is, do you think, I've looked at the trajectory of Yakubu Gowon, how he was, how he went through the ranks and, he gained favor with the British in London, and how he was rapidly, promoted in the army, and then he ultimately found himself as the head of state. And being familiar with the British kind of scheming, how the British can be very scheming and long-term planners, and how they can be manipulative. Do you think? Because I read somewhere where they say that the British, crown, they had particular interest in Gowan when he was in London, training at Sandhurst. Do you think that the British might have, been kind of preparing Gowan for this mission? That they would have foreseen that a day will come where this war would happen, and then they felt that Gowan would be the type of leader who they would be able to manipulate into carrying out that war. And seeing how he also gained prominence into the military and becoming head of state, and even when he was exiled, the British people, received him and all that. Do you think that would have been the case, that Gowan was, kind of prepared ahead of time, even without he himself Gowan knowing? So yeah, maybe you can start with that. And then the last one, maybe it's not a question, but I would like the day for you to link this whole, Biafran issue and Nigerian issue, the independence issue, to what is happening today, you know, in the middle belt. How the British people prepared them, for Nigeria of today, and how it has come back, and how it's now, the reality among them today. So, the British people, they refused to grant the Middle Belt autonomy from the North. They use their numbers to beef up the North and all that. And then today, the reality has been that the middle belt are facing all sort of issues. So I want to just know, you can just answer the questions anyway. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. I will start from behind. Okay, I'll start from behind. Most times I don't usually talk about anything that we that we respect yourself, Edo first son. Why are you telling him to open his mouth? The African proverb says something, okay? You don't tell an old woman to cover her legs. You don't know where she's breathing from. Be very careful. Do you understand? So you don't tell people to open their mouth. You don't know how they talk, okay? I appreciate you, my brother. You see, normally I don't like making videos on the Nigerian history or anything concerning Nigerian people because Nigerians are very emotional. It is honorable that brought me to this topic that I said, this is what I usually teach people around and everything, but I don't like bringing on air because Nigerians are very emotional. I made a video about the plight that Nigerian people are facing. It went viral. It went viral about the one, I think you saw it, honorable. I said you came into power. The first thing you did was to say no more first subsidy. You need to see a whole lot of people tantrum calling. In fact, when I went home, there was a family meeting, people and all whatnot. So, but on a good day, we are going to trace antecedent to that. Okay. And okay, let's look at Victor Banjo. You see, Victor Banjo was imprisoned by Ironsi for treason and everything, and Ojukwu released him. Ojukwu released Chukwu Makadna Nzogo, Ife Juna, and then when they went to Warri and break through Warri prison, they brought out Adewale Ademoyega and everything. You see, this is a very sensitive part of the history that on a good day, I'm going to diagnose it. I think I'll use like a bonus. The day we are going to diagnose it, like a lot of people's emotion will be very touched. You see, last time I asked you something, but I asked you who was in charge of Biafra. You people don't know why I asked that question. Who was in charge? Who was in charge? I told you that most of the reason why Biafra lost the war was not really because of Nigeria. Because if even with the fact that they were not, equipped, they still stood for 3 years. Do you understand? They still stood, even with everything that was happening around the world. They still stood their ground, okay? But there was an internal bleeding. When somebody's bleeding, and there's bandage everywhere, you can put some things. But when there's an internal bleeding, where do you put bandage? Where? When you are bleeding, you can hot water, everything. But when you are bleeding internally, the leadership structure was lacking in the Biafran military structure. But I don't really blame them. Why? Because the war came sudden. They didn't plan for the war. They didn't plan for the war. It came sudden. Do you understand? So let's look at Victor Banjo. You see, when I teach Nigerian Biafra Civil War, when I get to Victor Banjo and Emmanuel Ifejun, I cry. I feel so sad for them. People believe that it was Chukwu Makadna Nzogo that actually planned the January 15th, 1966 military coup d'etat. But the truth is that the master planner of that coup was actually Emmanuel Ifejuna. He was actually the one that, initiated the idea and then called his friends to join. The person that even involved Chukwu Makadna Nzogo was Christian Onoforo, because they were schoolmates and childhood friends, and then they involved Adewale Ademoyaga and Timothy Onwatuegu. And then Nwobosi came into the play because there was nobody to help them carry out the coup in Ibadan. So, and he was the commander of the 2nd Field Battle Artillery in Abeokuta. So he had to travel to Ibadan to make sure that the coup was successful, because the Western Nigeria was the only part of Nigeria that had a deputy Western Premier, Femi Fayode, who was second to Samuel Lakode Akintola. Okay, so that was that. So what am I saying? If you look at the lives of Ifejuna, I tell people something. Listen, because of the way the war happened, people like Victor Banjo was a lieutenant colonel. People like Emmanuel Ifejuna has done bigger things in the country. Do you know what it means to carry out a coup d'etat? He was a big boy. People like Chukwumakadina Nzogo. So they were not really seeing Ojukwu the way every other person was seeing Ojukwu. People like Alexander Madebo was a big boy in the army, in the Nigerian army, before Biafra happened. The reason why they have to come back and join Biafra, because that is their home. That is their home. And Ojukwu had to lead them because Ojukwu was the one who took the mantle. Not that he was actually bigger than them. Do you understand? They have done bigger things. Ojukwu was the commander of the 5th Battalion in Kano. Okay? When Uzogo carried out the coup and Ifejun and the rest of them. So there's how they were already seeing themselves. So the issue of command was suffering. Because you need to understand that when the Biafran army captured the Midwestern region, Ojukwu and Victor Banjo argued on who will be made the Midwestern governor. They were arguing on who would do it. So there was a little breach in command. That's why Ojukwu had to remind them that the person in charge of this Biafra is only 3 persons. Chukwu Makadina Nzogo. The 3 names belongs to him. But I believed, because if you read the history very well, you will find out that the execution of Victor Banjo and Emmanuel Ifejuna downplayed the morale of the Biafran soldiers. Because those people were already moving to capture Lagos, because they were already at Ore before Murtala Mohammed began to come with the 2nd Division. Okay? And another thing was vision. Vision. You see, when you are running something with people who don't have the same vision with you, it doesn't work. Because listen, when the idea of Biafra was convinced or conceived, Victor Banjo was in prison. Emmanuel Ifejuna was in prison. Nzog was in prison. They were in prison. So they did not carry the idea of Biafra with them. All they wanted was a revolution to make Nigeria better. So when Ojukwu was fighting for the pogrom to stop in the north, they were not experiencing it. It was Ojukwu that saw the pain that made him to declare Biafra. They were already serving their punishment. Do you understand? They were already coming to serve their punishment. So when they came out, they did not envisage Biafra. That's why they were able to make that move to hand over immediately to the Nigerian government. Now, the question is, stand crier, do you think they would have been executed? Different stroke to different folks. Ojukwu was the one in command, and this is military we are talking about. They have looked and they have seen that they actually committed a crime. And in military, once you have committed treason, you will pay for it. You will pay for it. But that was, I believe that if I was to be in their shoe, but I wish not to be in their shoe anyway, something better would have been done than executing them. Because I believe that people like Victor Banjo was an asset. People like Emmanuel Ifejuna was an asset. Imagine people like Victor Banjo, Emmanuel Ifejuna, and people like Joseph Achuze in one close battalion. You will achieve a lot. But that's why I said,
Sorry, modern day town crier, but it was Victor Banjo that, first of all, he's not a Biafran, right? He was not a Biafran. He's a Yoruba man, so he wasn't a Biafran. So I'm sure he didn't have the same aspirations as the Biafran. And secondly, according to what we read, Victor Banjo is the one who betrayed the march of the Biafrans towards Lagos. So why do you think that Ojukwu should not have executed him, or why he should not why he should have been kept as an asset, someone who betrayed the move towards towards Lagos.
Okay. I'm not saying that he should have been spared anyway. Do you understand? But there's something that usually, in military, we have open execution and closed door execution. Open execution, you let your opponent know that so person has been executed. I believe that if people like Victor Banjo should have been executed, it should have been done in public. Why? Because when the Nigerian troops found out that people like Victor Banjo has been executed, it boosted their morale. Why? Because it went a long way to expose that even within the Biafrans, there was an internal crisis. Okay? And Zendramadebo stated that they would have been held in custody and secretly tried and executed without the Nigerian side knowing that people like them has been executed. But when they found out that they have been executed for treason, that's when they knew that, oh, there's even internal crisis between these people. Okay? And you see, what really happened was that after people like Abato Okonkwo had been made the new Midwestern governor, Victor Banjo didn't like the idea. Okay, remember that the 12th Division of the Biafran Army was already stationed at Ore, waiting for instruction to advance towards Lagos. Okay, and Muta Muhammad them had to come. Ojukwu having internal intelligence system knew that Victor Banjo and Emmanuel Ifedina did not actually lose at Ore, that it was their plan to surrender. Okay, so what I'm saying actually that idea matters. Ideas, vision. When you are running with people that don't have the same vision with you, there's every tendency that they will sabotage your efforts. Let me give you for example. You see, I personally believe that when Nzogu came out of prison, Nzogu was in quagmire. Nzogu is out. He noticed that what he actually talks about, what he carried out the coup d'etat, has been misinterpreted by Nigeria as a whole. And Nzogu lived all his life in the north. He can't go back to the north. He had been seen as a betrayer, as a saboteur. Now, Ojukwu released him. He had to reciprocate what happened. That release. So you find out that some of these guys did not have the idea. Even Ojukwu himself, not that he was hungry for power. That's why he carved out Biafra. It was because he gave a chance. People that went to Abuli to give peace a chance. If what they agreed at Abuli actually happened, Nigeria will not fight a war. Okay? But that's what I'm telling you, leadership problem. If you look at the reason why Biafra lost the war, one of the reasons why what Zendramadebo stated was leadership problem. A lot of leadership problem because they were not prepared. And a lot of people who people looked up to in that war were not actually in the same vision with Ojukwu. They believed from the beginning that this will not work. That's why if you look at the war, that's why you have to respect people like Alexandra Madebo. Okay? People like Alexandra Madebo, you have to respect them. They stood their ground. Even after they have such a rank in the Nigerian army. They stood their ground. That's why when people talk about Isaac Dakaboro, okay, Isaac Dakaboro, who wanted to move the Niger Delta Republic, okay, initially, what he did is what you can do for your people. But most times, why I examine his consciousness was, how will you allow yourself to be recruited to come and fight your people again? Isaac Dakaboro died at the wall of Okreka in the Nigerian Biafra Civil War. Most times, people say they don't know how he died. He died in the war. He was recruited into the Nigerian army as a major, and he died in the Okreka War. Do you understand? So, one is intention. I believe that their execution actually had a lot of toil to do on the Biafran army. but they did what they did and they have to pay for the price. But I believe there will be another way. They would have been executed privately, later made openly, but your enemy shouldn't know what actually was happening in your house. Okay, but Ojukwu, being the leader of the Biafrans, did what he believed was the best, and the people, because when they're doing when trial is happening, remember, it's not the head of state that does the trial. You have panel, okay, that does the trial. So they were found guilty and they paid the price, and that was it.
The second question, the second question about Gowan, do you think he was prepared for it?
Oh, you see, Gowon as Sandhurst was regarded as the Queen's boy. Queen's boy. In fact, the way Gowon appeared into the Nigerian military scene, even the core Northerners were surprised. Who is this guy? Where is he coming from? Where is he coming from? Who is this guy? Because Gowon just appeared from nowhere and Ironsi just positioned him in a very good place. Like, who is this guy? That's why I tell people, you see, after Ironsi, okay, after Ironsi was taken out, one of the reasons why Ojukwu did not want to accept Gowon's legitimacy, because from all indication, Gowon was not next in command. Babatunde Ogundipe was. But the northern soldiers did not want to take command from him. They didn't want to take command from him because he was a Yoruba man, a Southerner. And they felt that it's time for the Northerners to handle this power. But ask yourself, why was people like Murtala Muhammad, who actually carried out the coup with Theophilus Danjuma and Muhammad Martins, why didn't they take position? Why? Because the British, I told people from the initial beginning of this class that the British knew that there would be a civil war in Nigeria even before independence. And that is why they strategically placed all the powerful military installation in the north. That's why they placed it there, in the north. Okay, because they know that the country, Nigeria, cannot stand without fighting a war. So Yakubu Gowon was prepared for that moment, even though he himself did not know that he was being used. Because if I look at the history and look at Yakubu Gowon, honestly speaking, in as much as everything that he did, I used to feel sorry for him. I'm telling you, Yakubu Gowon was like the Obama of America, who they brought in and used him to exterminate African leaders. Let us believe that is a black man that did this to us. Yakubu Gowon was just used as, come and play this dirty game. And at the end of the day, the people who were actually in power were people like Murtala Muhammad, even when Yakubu Gowon was in power. That was why he could give him an instruction: do not attack Onitsha through Asaba. But he refused and did it, and he was not punished. Because as long as he was consigned, who is Yakubu Gowon to tell us what to do? That was why immediately after the war, Nigeria was having oil boom. They didn't want to kill him. Okay? They didn't want to kill him. They just allowed him to went for OAU summit in Kampala, Uganda. They called him on phone, don't come back, just remain there. From there, start going to London. That was what they did to Gowon. Don't come back again.
Yeah.
Just from there, be going to London because we don't want to kill you. Go to London, don't come back. that was how they took over. That was how they took over. So I believe that actually Yakubu Gowon was actually used. It was used because you see, Ojukwu was seen as an arrogant boy. Ojukwu was an arrogant boy. Okay, that was how they perceived him, because this guy's father was the richest man. The father has money. When the Queen of England came to Nigeria, they used the father's car to drive her around. So this guy have seen money. Went to Oxford University. He has been exposed. You know, all those kind of things. So he was seen as the arrogant boy, and this guy was seen as the Queen's boy. Okay, so from the time he has been planned. And do you know where I feel sorry for him? Even, why do you think that Yakubu Gowon accepted the terms at Abuli? Yakubu Gowon could have said, I don't accept the terms in Abuli. No. I don't accept. This thing looks fishy. I will not accept. But Yakubu Gowon accepted. Because Yakubu Gowon even wanted the country to move forward like that. But he came back and the people that owns the country tell him, no, it will not work. Because he was being used. He was being used. Of course, he was a bachelor at that time. Everything, blood was hot and everything. So they used his face while the people behind, the British and everything, used him and did what they want to do. So I think I'm in the same page with you. I believe he was used. Because look at today's people are paying the price. People are paying the price. So that is my brother. Thank you very much.